Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a two-game college football slate tonight that starts at 7:30. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really does help the channel a lot. I do have some core plays here, and Will Howard, Phillip Brooks, and Isaiah Williams here. I'm gonna get into my odds real quick, just to get it out of the way. So I have Kansas State minus 11.5 and Illinois minus 3.5. I really do think that's pretty solid for both these games. I feel like Kansas State's going to destroy Oklahoma, and Illinois is going to beat up on Nebraska. Uh, so just to talk about this real quick, Kansas State is a pretty balanced team. They're 3-1 on the season. Oklahoma State is 2-2. Now, Oklahoma State does try to pass the ball out, but they have multiple quarterbacks that they're probably going to use, as none of their quarterbacks have done particularly well this season, and so they're going to be hit and miss from that perspective. As for Nebraska here, they're in a tough spot here as their top quarterback, Sims, is questionable. He's been out for a few games. He hasn't been very good so far this season either, but even their backup is not very good. Hartberg, he's been okay, but he hasn't been great. And so while he does draw some utility, uh, Illinois, they have a nice quarterback who's going to have a really good, solid game here, and Nebraska tends to run the ball more as a result. And they do have a good running back, but he hasn't been scoring a ton of touchdowns. So I think overall, Illinois is going to have a huge advantage here. And Illinois has playmakers, even though it's going to be a lower scoring game. Nebraska is definitely going to try to slow the game down, but I still think that they win the game comfortably. So I do like that there. So let's go ahead and get into our DraftKings bets here, or picks here. So at quarterbacks, we're going to start with Will Howard for Kansas State. Now, Kansas State has a big advantage in this game, and I expect them to win this game handily. He's also been very good with over 1,000 yards already this season with 8 touchdowns. He also runs the ball fairly good. He has 5 touchdowns on the ground, which is most for other quarterbacks. He doesn't tend to run the ball a bunch, but he always seems to get good situations to do so as they pass the ball well. So he's definitely a viable option here. We're also going to look at Meyer for Illinois. Now, he's a guy that you could throw into the quarterback or the S flex position. There's a contrarian option. He has been pretty solid this season, though. They don't throw the ball quite as much as Kansas State does. They're going to have some utility here. He has some good yardage games, and he definitely has touchdown potential. He also rushes the ball pretty good. He's actually number 2 on this slate when it comes to quarterbacks with the most rushing attempts. He also has 3 touchdowns as well, so he's definitely a viable option here. Looking at the Nebraska and Oklahoma State, uh, uh, Oklahoma State is going to probably use multiple quarterbacks in this games, and then there's still a question if Jeff Sims or Harburg will start. Both of these quarterbacks are pretty rough, though, so I don't really like any of the quarterbacks from those two games. But you could definitely Hail Mary one of them into that S flex position if you wanted to. Moving to the running backs, so we have a very interesting situation here. So Oklahoma State has the worst team to run, or Kansas State is a very good run defense team, which is going to really hurt or Oklahoma State here. And then for Nebraska, they really just don't have much that they've done on the ground, despite the fact that they are facing a plus matchup in that perspective. Uh, I don't expect them to run the ball much either, simply because they're probably going to get that behind early on. But for our running backs, we do like here. So we do like the running backs from Kansas State. Now they are kind of in a timeshare, and Giddens has played more whenever Ward has been out, and Ward should be back today. So that would hurt Giddens some, but he does get some passes through the air when he gets in here. So I think they're probably going to utilize him some. Now he did score 4 touchdowns last week. I don't expect that. But I do think he has the potential for a touchdown today, but he's a little pricey. But there are ways you could actually utilize where you could put both Kansas State running backs in there. As for Ward, he missed the last game, but he's been pretty solid in his 3 games he's played, including against the SEC team in Missouri. He did pretty well. So he also gets some passes through the air, and he has got touchdown potential today, assuming he does draw the start, which he is the top running back for their team, and so he should be good to go here with 3 touchdowns on the season too. um, overall. Then we're going to look at Illinois' running backs here. Now, they're kind of in a similar situation to Kansas State, where they have Love and McCray that both kind of run the ball evenly. Now, Love has been out, but he should be back, and he looks like he's in a pretty solid position to have a decent game here. He's been around 8 plus fantasy points each game. at the minimum, and he should be the main back here. He has some utility as he should be playing, and so he's definitely viable. McRae will be the backup likely today. He's been pretty solid in the games that he did start without Love, and that would be the Purdue game. But I don't expect him to get a ton of run here, and so he is in play, but he's a contrarian option and high risk, high reward. But he's also very cheap. The two running backs for Illinois are very cheap, so that gives him some advantage. Um, then we're going to look at our wide receivers, and we'll break it down team to team here. Now, I do have Kansas State's Brooks as a top tier play, and he is a great option. He's got the second most receptions of any player on this slate, and he's played less games than most of them. He's had a really solid start. He's going to get a lot of targets, and he has good big time upside here. Then we'll look at Sinnett for Kansas State. Now he's the tight end, and I really do like him a lot. I really wanted to make him a core play. The only issue it really has been is that he hasn't been super consistent, as he had one or two games without a bunch of receptions. But he has 16 receptions and 247 yards and two touchdowns on the season, and he's averaging pretty good fantasy points. He's definitely capable of a big game here in a plus matchup. Jackson is the third best wide receiver for this team. He's been really solid, and he has some really good utility here, though his targets are a little bit lower than the other two guys I already mentioned. And then if you want to Hail Mary one guy, then Garcia would be it. Garcia is in play as the third wide receiver. However, he doesn't get as many targets though he did in the first week. He hadn't played the last couple of games, so that's really benefited some other players. But he's very capable of having a good game, so he is definitely a contrarian option. But he's a little bit cheaper, so that helps. Then we'll look at Oklahoma State, and if you're going to target anybody from this team, uh, going to be a little contrarian here with the Bray and Stribling. Now Presley is the top wide receiver, but he has not been particularly great so far this season as he's missed a lot of targets and stuff. So even in a week of schedule where Stribling is in a really good spot, he's done pretty solid this season. Now Oklahoma State. Again, they have multiple quarterbacks, and he seems to do best with the guy that looks like he's going to start today, which is Bowman. And so he definitely has some utility here. Bray also has done pretty well with Bowman and I think that gives him some utility here, but he's still high risk, high reward, though he's been pretty solid throughout the season so far. And then also Johnson, obviously, he definitely has the potential to have a good game, but he has not been consistent so far, especially with the quarterback differentials. So I definitely like Bray, then Stribling when it comes to the wide receivers for Oklahoma State. Looking at Nebraska, there's really not a whole lot to like here other than Brian Kemp. Uh, Billy Kemp here. He has some nice utility. He's gotten some good receptions game to game. He's actually been in double figures in four of the five games of the season. He's also nice and cheap, but he's going to be really tough as the quarterback play here is going to be quite rough, likely. And then for Illinois, Williams is obviously the top play. He's got the most receptions of anybody on the season. Surprisingly, he doesn't have a touchdown yet, but he's had two straight 100-yard games, and he's been over 10 fantasy points in every single game. He's got great opportunity to have a big game, and so I do like him a lot. But I also like Bryant for Illinois as well, as he's been pretty good with the targets the last couple weeks. He's really seemed to improve, and he's had some big games, but he does have a low floor, so to keep that in mind. But he's a great option for that S flex spot or even the regular flex spot if you choose not to go with two quarterbacks. Um, for that that slot there, I would definitely look at Bryant or a different Kansas State wide receiver, or I would look at putting one of the two Kansas State running backs in the S flex as well if you go with the Illinois or Oklahoma State running back. And then obviously Howard or Outmeyer are definitely viable in the S flex if you don't want to put Howard at quarterback. So with that said, guys, thank you guys for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.